see your mother. You were only given one. Go see your mother. And you know that you will never have another. Go see your mother. Go see your mom.
Welcome to Jewish Boy Calls His Mother. I'm your host, Sadia, and this is my mother, Ima. Hey, Ima.
Hello. Wasn't feeling well today, which accounts for me not looking so great.
That's fine. You look fantastic. You look absolutely stunning.
So we were discussing, in continuation of the speakeasy bas mitzvahs that we were discussing, and then today I saw what you said about the a certain kosher store in Baltimore.
Wait, Ima, let me just. I want to start it off and give a precedent first.
Okay.
And then we can dive into it because I feel like I want to keep listeners' understanding of what's going on.
Okay.
And then we can go ahead and elaborate. That's how I want to tackle it. All right.
Fine.
So
that's fine.
I was, and I want to start like cutting back on telling everybody where I'm from.
Yeah.
So we were in a store and we were going down the cereal aisle and we saw a Reese's Puffs cereal box, but the cover at the front and the back of it was covered in these like peelable stickers. So I was a little confused and I took a look at it. And as I peeled it back, I realized it was a picture of a woman. She was dressed, I would say, like inappropriate for a religious store to have. Like, I get it. And then in the back, it was the same woman, this time with a little more clothing, but her position was like kind of like crouched down, so to speak. So again, it was a little more provocative.
Well, the thing was, it was a basketball player.
It was a basketball player.
Yeah.
Again, I'm trying to paint a picture.
Okay.
I'm trying to create a painting and understanding for our listeners.
Okay.
And then we're going to have you dive into it. Okay. So I want to try to keep that going, and then we can really dive in. But I need you to just hold your horses just a little bit. Okay. Thank you. So it was a WNBA player. I think her name was Angel Reese, and that's the whole point. Her name is Angel Reese, so it's Reese's Puffs cereal.
Uh-huh.
And at first I was very upset about it because I've never seen that before in this store where I am. And it was very frustrating because it was my understanding that I lived in a more modern Orthodox environment that didn't adhere to a lot of, I would say, more ultra Orthodox, more stringent perspective. Now, I understand why they might have would want to cover up her shoulders and the rest of her body, but why they had to cover everything up? Maybe because it was just easier to do it that way, just to slap it on and that's it. But it's an interesting topic to discuss, and I want to hopefully let you lean into this and discuss it and elaborate on it. The main part is, how do you understand the idea of tznius and what you're willing to expose to your children and what's your limitations, and how do you help a community that's trying to find its place? Because Judaism is always in flux, either up or down. And I feel like there's always this pull between the far left and the far right of Judaism, where, one side can have a bar mitzvah, whatever, and the other side doesn't think you're keeping kosher because you don't have separate tables for milk and meat. So it's just like, it's that frustrating balance where you're always going back and forth and you're always going to have this negative push and pull. So now that I've set that scene, now you could dive in.
Okay. There are two quotes that are going through my mind. One is an old quote from my mother that she used to say. She says there's from and there's verfromd. Verfromd, of course, is people going overboard. And A rabbi that was one of our teachers at Machal Chana once said, beware, the Yetzer Hara can very often approach us wearing a kapata and a shtreimel. In other words, you think you're doing something that in the interest of enhancing frumkeit, and what you're really doing, you're really either turning people off or you're really feeding into your ego, which I think a lot of this is based on. And also there's the possibility, which happened to you kids one time, of calling attention to something that you don't want the frum kids to be exposed to, but by pointing it out or covering it up, you're actually calling attention to it. I'll give you an example. When the Preakness was at the Pimlico racetrack, one of the rabbis announced to the boys in his school, I don't want any of you boys going near the Preakness. The parents were very upset. Why? He said, our kids didn't even think of it. Our kids, it was the furthest thing from their mind until you brought it up. And you were the one, by bringing attention to it, now they want to go there. Now they want to see what this is all about. Yeah. And there's something else too I was discussing once with a rabbi. We were discussing about what to expose your kids to, how much to expose your kids to, blah, blah, blah. You know, the usual I'd say difficulties of raising a frum child in a secular society. And he said, look, he said, it's like giving somebody an immunization, a shot against a disease. What's the idea of immunology? What's it, immunology? What's it?
Something like that.
Yeah. The idea is you're giving them a little bit of the dormant form of the disease, so the body can develop immunizations, the body can develop antibodies against it. And he says, if you're going to go out of your way to try to protect them from this, protect them from that, they shouldn't see this, they shouldn't see that. He says, the day's going to come when they're going to be old enough to go out on their own and to go where they want to go. And you can't have spies or people following them around. And they're not going to know how to handle seeing this stuff or being exposed to this stuff because you overprotected them. Now, I can understand one time when Rite Aid had the Sports Illustrated bathing suit issue that came out, I think June or July, and they had on the front cover, I mean, talk about bikini clad, talk about bikini clad. And I was irritated because, hey, you have this right out in the open. This is a family store. And I called the manager and I was very irritated. And he says, but it's the bathing suit issue of the Sports Illustrated. I said, I don't care. I said, put it back someplace where our kids aren't coming up to the cash register and being exposed to this. And actually, the woman who took my call before she turned the phone over to the manager whispered to me, she didn't like the idea. And there were people that actually wrote into Sports Illustrated, that said that, why are you even having this? What does this, why, who cares what bathing suits these, female athletes wear? Although there was somebody very interesting. One of the female athletes was a religious Muslim woman, and she was modeling a Tannistic bathing suit, which I was very impressed with. So, wow, that's really, that's really good. But the thing is that what was done with the cereal, had they just ignored it, okay, maybe some people would have squawked about it, whatever. I mean, it's not like this female athlete who was a basketball uniform is not a bikini.
Oh, the front cover. Did you see the picture?
I saw it. You showed it to me, and it wasn't,
the front cover.
You showed it to me. I saw you. Yeah, you showed it to me. I saw the picture of it. Okay, but In other words, what they did is now attracting attention to it.
I have a question.
I mean, this is a grocery store. What's coming next? What's it? Little Mermaid cereal or something? They're gonna block off the Little Mermaid. I mean, come on.
They've done that. They've done that.
They
They have done that for advertisements for swimming things,
Mhm.
in the store. But the thing is, and I'm realizing it now, is that it's not the store has the policy because they're so from,
Mhm.
is that they don't want to hear complaints.
Could be right about.
They don't want to
about
hear
that.
some from lady with her
Mhm.
screechy voice being, "Oh my God, it's terrible. Can you believe it? It's just such a shanda. I can't believe it. I'm not sharing this ever again. I'm going to market."
It's
I
very
wouldn't want to hear
sexist
that for
of you.
5 seconds, let alone 5 minutes.
Sexist of you, Mister.
Oh,
Not
so men are complaining about it?
women have high screechy voices. Do I have a high screechy voice? Do I have a high screechy voice?
You could push it. You could push it. I actually have another provocative question for you.
Whoa, provocative is getting.
Well,
Whoa, better watch your topics, man.
Were you ever turned off by Judaism when you were from?
You're not when I was from.
Really? You
Because
never
I
had a
made-
quitting moment?
Oh, that was when your father and I were first married. Yeah, we
Okay.
were going through a very, very hard time.
Can you elaborate?
Remember I told you about that. It was around Hanukkah time,
Yeah.
and we had no heat, no hot water, and in this old apartment that we were renting, and your father wasn't finding a job, and I was getting to the point where, oh gosh, it wasn't frumkeit. It was basically, something about anybody could have gone through that, from or non-from, or even not Jewish, non-Jewish, especially in New York, an old apartment that you're renting, and the systems. I mean, they since the 1970s, they've done a very good job recently of updating the systems in New York. I mean, I've seen the newer apartments, and I've never heard anything from anybody about not having heat or hot water in the middle of the winter. But when I was living in New York in the 1970s, or we were living in New York in the 1970s, that was very common in New York because so many of these systems were so old, or I should say antiquated. And it got to the point where I felt like just throwing in the towel and you know, just going back home and go back home and getting a regular, job, regular full-time job, and just ditching this whole thing. And that's why I told you I read that letter from the Rebbe. I opened up one of the Rebbe's, one of the books with, I forgot which book it was. It was, I guess, some of the Rebbe Sichas. And there it was, and the Rebbe said, that a lot of times when people are going through difficulties in life, he says they feel like taking the easy way out. And he said, and that's what the Hellenistic Jews did. He says the Hellenistic Jews decided to take the easy way out. And the Rebbe said in this particular series says that he knows that sometimes people can be going through a very hard time, but don't quit. If you don't quit, if you stick with it, your reward in the end is going to be very great. And you're going to be, you're going to be happy that you didn't quit, you stuck it out. And it's kind of like, wow, it really hit him. And I said, okay, that's it. I'm in. I'm going to, I'm going to stick it out. And Baruch Hashem, things did work out.
Now, my question really was being turned off by Judaism and wanting to leave. You'd never really said it outright, but was that what you were talking about? Like you just want to quit Yiddishkeit in the Frum Welt and just go find a regular job and leave and go to Baltimore and then just live a less religious life?
I think so. I don't remember totally, but I think so. I think it did cross my mind. Yeah. But I'm glad I didn't do that. I'm very glad I did not do that. But I remember before I became from, when I was young, junior high and high school, one of the things that turned me off to Judaism, to the idea of even thinking of a from way of life. Well, first of all, I didn't know that you could choose to be from. I thought you either had to marry into it or be born into it. I didn't know it could be an actual choice. And it was a couple of things I saw. It was, first of all, writings, like Chaim Potek's writings, where he showed the boy in the book The Chosen, the boy who comes from He didn't say, I don't know what community it was. He didn't say they were Satmar, but the way he described them, they looked like it might have been the Satmar community. Seeing those kind of extreme Hasidic groups very much turned me off. And quite honestly, seeing people like what we see now going overboard, going way, way beyond what the Torah really, requires of us. I saw a lot of that, and it also turned me off.
But what about the idea of pain and suffering helps you grow and be a better person, and maybe looking in a way of it might be painful and frustrating, but that will help you grow, like you said previously.
Yeah. Let's put it this way. As Jews, we don't look for it. But if it happens when you do have, pain, it's comforting to know that the difficulties we're going through are not in vain, that they're not for nothing, that there will be something that you will gain from it. But we don't look at, of course, I said we don't look for it. We try to avoid it if possible. But let's face it, life is life, and you can't always avoid challenges and difficult situations. So, I mean, you can try your best to try not to create the circumstances that are going to lead to difficulties. But other than not creating those circumstances, doing your best. When I say not to create those circumstances, let's face it, life is life, and you are going to get thrown curved balls that are beyond your control. But it's good to know that once you get through these, once you get through these difficult situations, you know yourself that you've been through a lot of difficult situations, and you know that you learned from them.
Yeah.
And in many respects, they kind of, I guess, made you tougher, nicer, sometimes nicer,
Sure.
sometimes more understanding. Sometimes it even helps you to be able to help others that are in that same situation, that you can share with that person, your situation that you were in, and maybe even be able to give them some advice about what they can do to solve it, since you've been through it already.
Yeah. Was there ever something in Judaism that you just couldn't get past and couldn't do?
Be so rich I can give a tremendous amount of tzedakah.
Okay, enough with the.
Give millions of dollars to basically
I love it how
and tell them what their policy should be.
I love it how like you had a fleeting moment of being honest and introspective, and you just threw it out the window and just went for this BS of whatever, and everybody can hear it, everyone can see it. You can't run away from it. I asked you a simple question. Just simply understanding it. Was there something that was difficult for you to do?
Rephrase that question again. Wait a minute. Maybe I misunderstood it.
Okay. So what part of Judaism in regards to Torah and mitzvos, and maybe even culturally, that you saw, but you just couldn't do it? For a simple example that I know you did would be like someone saying they just can't do Chalav Yisrael. Or if you're a man, you just can't do no Kol Isha. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I'm trying to think of it because I'll tell you the truth, I'm very gung-ho on Chalav Yisrael.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. You're gung-ho about a lot of things. That's why I want to know, what weren't you gung-ho about? Like, what did you quit on? Because that would be interesting to know, because you're such a non-quitter.
Secular music.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
Classical music, secular. I know a lot of from people who, in fact, when I was in seminary, I remember just walking in to put myself in a better mood. I started singing some sort of secular, like some rock song, not with dirty lyrics or anything. It was just a regular, G-rated rock song. And one of the girls was just horrified, and she said, you shouldn't be singing that, and giving me the whole 9 yards. And then it put me back in a bad mood. And I started crying because I was singing this song to try to get out of feeling depressed.
Why?
And the other girl came to her and she said, look, she said she was in a really bad mood and she was just trying to sing a little innocent song to get herself into a better mood. You really shouldn't have done that. She yelled at this really from girl that got on me. And I'll tell you the truth, I'm not a purist. I enjoy music, and if it's a nice, jumpy, nice beat, rock song, whatever. Like I said, as long as it's not, schmutzy lyrics, and it helps you it helps you get into a better mood. Or classical music, I just don't, I just don't believe, I just don't believe in going to that extent. Now, movies, to tell you the truth, I don't. I generally, I'll take my grandchildren like to some G-rated movies, some nice like cartoon movies when they come to visit. If their mothers want me to, the mothers. In fact, one of your sisters said, "Hey, take my kids out to the movies this afternoon." I think it was Sukkot Chalamoy. I said, "Sure, why not?" I took them out to a movie, but I generally don't go to movies for one reason. I have yet to see a movie with what they're charging today that was worth magnetic tape it was recorded on.
They don't use something like that.
Like throwing my money away on the stupid movies that are out there. Has nothing to do with from cut. Has to do with economics.
It's just not worth it.
Wasting my money, and I don't feel like supporting these Hollywood actors and actresses that are living, lifestyles that are in the sewer. Okay.
So I have a question. Can you elaborate on that moment you were singing that Gaisha rock song when you were in Mechon Chana and then like feeling depressed? Can you figure out why you were depressed and upset and what were you trying to do?
It could have been hormonal.
You just
well, New York is New York speaks for itself. Okay, New York is a very congested city, traffic-wise, everything. The weather, I think it was the middle of the winter, something. The weather wasn't exactly the greatest, and of course, I had respiratory problems. And like I said, one of the problems that we had at that time at Mechon Chana also was like I said, the heating system. It was like I said, it was an antiquated heating system. It was an old building. It was, I think, the middle of the also. It was the middle of the winter, and we had no heat or hot water, and it was a real problem. And in fact, the woman who was in charge of the dormitory went into the director's office and kind of gave it to him. And not only did she give it to him, but we had, the like the cook slash social worker slash psychological therapist. Because ask any girl in a seminary, a cook is not a cook. She is cook slash social worker, cook slash psychotherapist. She was so mad about the heat and hot water situation without even like approaching the receptionist to say that she wanted to talk to the director. She stormed into the office, but burst open the door. The story went that she walked right up to the director and whoa, gave it to him with both barrels in Yiddish.
Oh, wow.
Well, let's put it this way. This woman had spent time in a prison camp in Siberia. So she wasn't afraid of anybody or anything.
Nope. Yeah, that would do it to you. That would do it to you. Wow. Yeah. It's so funny that like people that back in the day where like you think about them, you're like, they went through a lot. And like you were a kid, you didn't really comprehend. Like I'm thinking of like Rabbi Taub, who was a Holocaust survivor, went through Auschwitz and everything, lived off of like moss and grass. And like I just remember as a kid just constantly seeing him. He was always smiling. And I talked to him a little bit, just wish him a good Shabbos and that'd be it. And like looking back, I'm like, these people went through who knows what. And like other teachers that I knew or grandparents that I knew, it's wild. It's absolutely wild.
I remember one of the girls was very angry about something, and she decided to discuss the situation with Nisa Mengel. And Nisa Mengel said to her, and here's a man who lost his family at Auschwitz. He was a kid. He was 9 years old or something, when he stood in front of Joseph Mengele and he was almost used for an experiment. And he said to her, there is no reason on the face of the earth for anyone to be angry about anything.
Wow. That's that's where you get hardcore. Yeah. That's again, like that's what I keep on thinking of, like it's a missed opportunity because I was just a kid that didn't understand what I had, or the people
Mhm.
that were around me. It's like, you know, like it's so ironic where like you never, it's been mentioned 5 million times and all these stuff, but like you don't know what you have till it's gone, you know?
There was a Jackson 5 song years
Yeah.
ago about that. They paved paradise and put up a parking lot.
That's not Jackson 5 song. That's, I think that's
What?
yeah,
What?
pay paradise, put up a parking lot.
It was Jackson 5, and it was um Michael Jackson when he was a little boy
No,
who sang it.
it's this song is called Big Yellow Taxi, and it's by the Counting Crows.
Yeah, goodness.
Pay paradise, put
Yeah.
up a parking lot.
Who was the little kid that sang the solo?
There was no kid that sang
Yeah.
solo.
But
No.
yesterday, a green red taxi came. Yesterday, I heard the screen door slam, and a green yellow taxi took away our old man. It was I thought it was a little kid that sang that verse.
No. And it's listen late last night, heard the screen door sway, and a big yellow taxi took my girl away.
No. I think that you know what I think. I think there was a remake of it because the original was with the. I'm almost sure the original was with the Jackson 5 with Michael Jackson singing the solo, and I think many years later they did a remake of it. I think you're looking at the remake.
Um, the Pay Paradise Put Up a Parking Lot was a lyrics from Joni Mitchell's song Big Yellow Taxi. It was nothing to do with the Jackson 5. Yep.
I don't think that's accurate because I remember when the song. I remember the song was on the radio.
Pay Paradise Put Up a
I know
Parking Lot.
Mitchell did a version of it, and I'm almost sure the Jackson 5
It's
did
an
a version
original
of their version.
1970s song, and then the Counting Crows did a 2002 version.
Well, that's not the
But
version then.
it was, you're thinking of the Joni Mitchell. That was Joni Mitchell. It had nothing to do with
I
Jackson
remember
5.
I remember Joni Mitchell's I don't know. I think you know you can't believe everything you read over the internet.
You know, it's not about not reading. It's called a search engine. I typed in Jackson 5 Paved Paradise. I'm pretty sure there's no conspiracy theory here. It just doesn't exist. You misunderstood your past, and that's okay. It's fine. How many times have you thought of something and realized that, you know, it wasn't true, that you imagined it?
I did not imagine this.
Honey, you imagined it. It's not real. Jackson 5 did not write a song, Big Yellow
They didn't
Taxi.
write it, but I think they did a version.
They never did a version of it. There's only two versions, the Counting Crows and Joni Mitchell. That is it. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, after this podcast, I'm going to go on YouTube and see if I can download the Jackson 5 version of it, and I'm going to send it to you.
Listeners, I want you to understand this conversation, just elaborate it to anything else, was my childhood. My mother would tell me these lies. I'd prove her wrong and be like, I'm pretty sure this isn't true. And then she would double down and triple down, then gaslight me thinking that I was wrong in the first place.
Well,
it's fine. I'm an adult now.
Really
it's okay.
Blessed to think of this as something that's important. We are living an amazing life.
It's fantastic. I love my life. Baruch Hashem, K'nai Nahara. It's fantastic. It's amazing. It's just every day's a blessing. But Big Yellow Taxi was never sung by the Jackson 5. Now, I guess, let me think. If we can elaborate further. Because I remember as a kid, you know, this movie called Shazam. And it was with, I believe, Sinbad. Turns out a lot of people thought that was also, they also saw the movie. It never existed.
Really?
Yeah.
How come?
Yeah.
How did that happen?
It's something called the Mandela effect. It means when a group of people believe something as true, but it really just never existed.
I remember remember a TV program, a cartoon program called Shazam. That I remember. I don't remember a movie, but I remember like a kids like one of those kids cartoon programs.
Yeah, no, that's different. This is Shazam. It was a Sinbad movie. Like in my head, I thought this was a real movie, but I realized like afterwards that like it never existed.
Mm-hmm.
But we just, like, a lot of people just assumed it did. That's the whole thing. So
Mm-hmm.
maybe you might have thought the Jackson 5, but it just never existed, That's what I'm saying. Maybe it just never existed, and that's okay. But I'm curious, sure. How would you handle arguments when you were a teenager? Because I'm realizing this, you're an older adult trying to have a conversation with their son, and like, I know you're wrong, and you're like ignoring everything. I'm like, it must have been way worse when you were a teenager.
Oh, I had to be right all the time.
What made you feel like you had to be right?
Because if I wasn't, there was hell to pay.
Can you elaborate on that?
Oh gosh, in school, if you didn't have the answer, oh boy, some of these teachers would come down on you, call you every stupid name in the book, or your parents. Like if my parents asked me something, and if I didn't come up with the right answer, oh boy, would I be yelled at, or maybe even smacked.
Yeah, because you deserved it. Because you were wrong. Wow. So what about you were?
It took as a matter of fact, I was talking to a good friend of mine who's from my generation. She grew up in the same type of atmosphere, same type of home, education and home. And she said she actually went to therapy to try to get out. And she did. She succeeded to actually get out of that mentality that she had to be right all the time. That, hey, if you're wrong, guess what? You're not going to disintegrate. You're not going to die. The world's not going to come to an end. You can be wrong, and it's perfectly all right. It's like I tell my music students, if you play a wrong note on the piano, don't you know the piano's going to explode? And they crack up laughing. Or a girl I was teaching violin to the other day, and it's like sometimes when these kids play instruments, they're afraid of them. There's something about these instruments that's frightening to them. And I mentioned it to a teacher. What I did was, last week was the Parsha Vayigash, where Serach tells Yaakov, and that Yosef is still alive. And so every year when the school studies this, I bring in my violin to the preschoolers, and I line them up, and I put the violin under their chins, and I show them how to hold the bow, and then I help them. I use their hands holding the bow and the violin to play the violin, to show them how it goes. Because Serach, one of our rabbis, did some research. A lot of people think Serach played the harp. No, she didn't. She played an early version of what is today's violin. And it was bigger. It was bigger. It was like flatter. It was bigger. And you didn't put it under your chin. You held it more in a downright position against your arm. And that's how she was able to sing and play this instrument at the same time. Because you can't sing. In fact, we were talking about this in one of the classes. They wanted to know, why can't you sing and play the violin? So I said, okay. So I put the violin under my chin and I tried to sing. My mouth kept hitting the chin rest. So it's a little hard to sing and play the violin. But we had some kids that looked at it and, well, like these are like 3 and 4 year old children. And some of them like they wouldn't even go near it. They wouldn't touch it. And so I said, here, touch it. It doesn't bite. Come on. And when the teachers, I was mentioning this to one of the teachers about, even with my students, sometimes when they first start taking piano violin, sometimes they're a little bit afraid of the instrument. And she says, well, she goes, it's big and it makes noise. That's what scares them. So I told one of my violin students that, like, she was afraid to make a mistake. And I go, don't worry. If you make a mistake, the violin will not explode. I said, try it. Purposely play a wrong note. So she did. And I said, okay. I said, did anything happen? No. That's all. Don't worry. And I think I've seen too many music teachers. And like when I was growing up, there were too many music teachers. Oh gosh, you played a wrong note. Oh man, it was the end of the world. You played that wrong note, or you goofed up on a piece, or like there was this one boy, it was so funny. He was a cello player in our orchestra, and the orchestra teacher stopped the orchestra and he turned to him and said, you played a wrong note on that measure. And so the boy says to the music teacher, yeah, but look at all the right notes I played.
What did he do? What was the reaction?
Everybody cracked up laughing. The teachers actually started laughing. Says, "Okay, that's the way of looking at it. All right." They says, "How can you say that? What do you mean? Look at all the right things you played."
Do you remember any smart aleck comments you used to say when you were a teenager?
Oh, well, if my mother got upset about something that I thought was kind of stupid, I would go, "Repeat after me. It's not a tragedy. It's not a tragedy. It's not a tragedy."
What would you do? Beat you?
What do you mean it's not a tragedy?
Love it. Yeah, because I mean,
But I like what my mother would say in the morning sometimes. Sometimes we would come down to the kitchen and say, "Good morning." And so jokingly, she would say, "What's so damn good about it?" And I'd say to her, "Your name's not in the obituary, is it?"
that's very, very cute. Do you remember how your parents used to wake you up when you were a kid?
Just get out. Yeah.
Oh, because I
Okay,
remember.
wake up. Time to wake up. I remember you guys. I finally I gave up on trying to, especially one time I was trying to get you out of bed. I used to call it Slurpee time. I woke you guys up exactly at 7:11 because I found that 7 o'clock was like a little too early-ish, but 7:11, those extra 10 minutes made a big difference. So I'd come into your room and say, "Hey, Slurpee time, 7:11." And one time you weren't getting out of bed. I forgot how old you were, but you were getting in those teenage years. And I grabbed your legs to try to drag you out of bed. And you kind of kicked me and I almost fell back.
Oh gosh, I'm
So
sorry.
after that, I said, "Okay, my boys are getting too big for me now to handle physically. So I'll just use the radio torture." And I would just come into your room in the morning. I would turn the radio on 7:11, full blast, and walk out.
It worked. It worked. But yeah, no, I remember that. I remember as a kid, you would do the whole it's another morning, and I'll start out with the song. You know, that's how I had it when I was a kid. And as I got older, I actually remember that moment of you pulling me and me getting really annoyed and unfortunate. I hate to say this, I kind of kicked you because I think I was like 16,
Yeah.
and I was like in my bed, and it's like I have 13-hour days in school. It's no joke. And then I have like an hour to myself when I get home, and then or 2 hours max. Then I'm
Right.
back in bed before I wake up the next day at 7.
Hmm.
And like I was an angsty teenager, definitely. I was good at school. I was on my honor roll for 2 years in a row for Hebrew and English.
Hmm.
My GPA was fantastic. Like I was good. I just was really stressed out.
Sure.
And like yeah, I remember I was just very tired that one morning, and you were grabbing me by my ankle, and like I did not want to wake up, and I like try to shove you off, just break it off. I didn't realize how close you were because my eyes were closed, and then like I felt you go, oh, I'm like, oh shit, oh gosh.
One morning with one of your younger brothers, where I had a very hard time waking him up, and I decided one morning, I don't know if we did this on the previous podcast, I was going to
Yep.
teach him a lesson and say, "Listen, I got to get to work, and you're going to walk. Goodbye." So I can't wait around for you. I need to be at work on time. So I left. And then later on that morning, I looked outside. It was pitch black. I think there was a tornado warning. And I got scared. And I called the school.
Thank you for listening to Jewish Boy Calls His Mother. Please comment and subscribe on our Facebook page, YouTube channel, and Instagram. I would greatly appreciate it, and my mother would too.